Here's the thing that I was thinking to discuss. I don't want to put anybody on blast. So Jared Height, this isn't like I'm not like talking shit on you or calling you out, but you commented and it brought up an interesting thing, and I feel like it's worth looking at. So Jared said that he's pretty sure this is under a video where we talked about that shot from the Brazilian No Way Home trailer where you can see
Yep.
Lizard getting punched, and some people were like, "Oh, it's Miles because he's invisible." Jokingly or
Oh, that's
not.
a good point.
Well,
Actually,
it's not. It's not going to be Miles. It's one of the other Peters. But like this guy says, and this is the reason I'm bringing this up is not to single this guy out. It's just that I've heard this a lot, and I think that this comment thread shows kind of what these are the types of takes that get passed around, and I feel like people don't really think about them. Like they just kind of adopt a take they see and they just go with it, and then they say that, and then somebody else adopts that, and you know what I mean? Like they're not really thinking about what you're saying. I guess it's like
right.
everybody wants to have a hot take. So I'm pretty sure Miles couldn't be in the MCU because this version of Peter Parker draws so many elements of him that he'd either be an unoriginal ripoff or he'd be Miles Morales in name only. And I was like, can you list the elements that are drawn from Miles? As someone who's read both for years, I don't see it. And this is literally, I've heard this type of thing that like, oh, MCU Peter Parker is just Miles. Like they just took all of his Miles traits and gave them to Peter. And it's like, what? And yeah, he actually ended up admitting, Jared did, I'll admit, that is from a coworker who is a comics fan. But Ned bears similarity to Miles' best friend from the comics, and also Miles at one point in the comics ends up having a crush on the Vulture's granddaughter. And it's like, those are the two elements that, I mean, yeah, Ned is clearly Genki renamed, Genki from the Ultimate Spider-Man Marvel Universe. Well, he's in the, it's 616 now too. He's Miles' best friend. So yeah, they did kind of take Genki and give him Ned Leeds' name or whatever. And it's, fine, whatever. I don't care. But like to say that they took a bunch of elements from Miles and just Peter is completely a ripoff of Miles, it doesn't make any sense. And
that's absurd.
And I'm glad that Jared admitted that, because I think this kind of reveals an issue that happens in fandom where, like I said, people will just hear something from someone that is more of a comics fan than they are, right? And then they will just run with what that person said as if it's valid, and it's like, no, it's not. This Peter Parker is, one of the. I mean, honestly, I'd say this Peter Parker is probably the best live action version that we've gotten.
I agree.
You can say that maybe Toby was a more interesting one, or Andrew was a better Spider-Man, or whatever. But like in general, all around, this is the best version, the best adaptation.
That's what I was gonna say. Because Toby was a good Peter, Andrew was a good in Spider Suit. I think Tom does a great job at both. But like if we were gonna like draw comparisons to Miles, we'd be looking at more like personality and power set, right? And neither of those things are true.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's almost like there's some truth to the Genki / Ned thing. There's some truth to that, as far as like, clearly they were like, well, this dude looks kind of like Genki, we'll just name him Ned. And that, I don't know why they made that decision necessarily, but they did. And so it just seems like from that, people just want to find other ways that they stole character traits or whatever from, which, by the way, having a friend is not a character trait. It's just, but yeah, it's like they just, and then the other thing you mentioned is because he had a crush on Vulture's granddaughter. Like, what? That's, yeah, it's doesn't make any sense. By the way, Jared Height, once again, I'm not calling you out or talking shit on you, man. I actually appreciate that you admitted that this is where you got that take from. But I did want to use your comment as an example to maybe give people, something to think about the next time they hear someone that they perceive as a more of a comics fan than them. Just because they have an opinion doesn't mean it's a good one. Just because they know more about comics than you doesn't mean that you need to adopt whatever they say.
Right. I wonder if in the MCU they'll ever bring in Miles, because I mean, we did get the Donald Glover scene, like his uncle, and I'm just wondering why they did that. If there was no plans to bring Miles in in this trilogy.
Well, the problem, I mean, I don't know if it's a problem necessarily, but yeah, kind of. It goes back to what we are talking about with Sony's track record. After this movie, Sony is on their own again with
Yep.
Spider-Man. And, maybe they'll decide to make another deal and, to keep him in the MCU, but probably not. Okay.
See, that's what
I
I've been
gotta,
saying.
all right, I gotta do something with my cat. Hold on. He's tearing shit up. I'll be right back.
That's what I've been saying is, because we have a talk a lot about what will happen to Spider-Man after this, because it seems that this deal was just too good to be true in the first place. Like, two studios putting their shit aside. Money was obviously a main factor in it, and eventually one studio's gonna get greedy. Like, it's human nature to want more, and I just think that this, like I said, from the beginning, it was too good to be true, and I don't know how long it will last. It's definitely not going to be forever. And it seems that now that Sony has got a little taste of what can happen when you make a good and tell a good Spider-Man story, that they're going to be like, okay, we can do this now. Like, let's take the training wheels off.
I missed it, but it sounds like a good opinion.
My opinion is that the deal between Marvel and Sony always seemed a little too good to be true. Like, two studios putting their shit aside to tell good stories. Of course, money's a main factor, but one of them's gonna get greedy eventually. It's just
Well, I mean, they're both greedy. It's just like they basically, what the reason that it worked is because they found a way for both of them to profit, off of the deal.
yeah.
Like, I don't think anybody was taking a hit. I
No
think
one's
that
taking a hit.
it benefited the MCU big time to have Spider-Man part of it. It like legitimized it even more. And then Sony basically had, them going to Feige and basically saying, hey, we can't make a good Spider-Man movie on our own. We've tried now and we keep fucking it up. Please help us. That's kind of an admission that they needed help. And maybe, I like to think, maybe I'm naive and too optimistic, but I like to think that they've learned something from these three movies, in how to do things on their own. Maybe the quality will dip. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe Peter Parker dies in this movie, and then we get Miles in the next one. Who knows?